Tak, tak,
Yeah.
tak, tak, tık, tak, tak, tık, 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 tık.
The British Film Institute is going to be home to an extended season of Satyajit Ray films, starting from the 14th of August to the 5th of October. Satyajit Ray is considered, undoubtedly, over the span of years, one of the most extraordinary filmmakers from India, and who takes a place in the whole host of brilliant directors of world cinema.
I'm interested in human beings and interested in the relationship between human beings. That is something which deeply concerns me, and it has concerned me right from the beginning. I think some of it has come from the reading of literature, Bengali literature. It certainly is an aspect of Vibhuti Bhushan very much. But again, an individual, after all, belongs to a certain social class, and he carries with him the problems of his class. And when you show a human being in a film, you obviously cannot show him in isolation from his problems, his background, his surroundings, the particular class to which he belongs.
Satyajit Ray made 37 films, most of them feature films, some documentaries and some shorts. And he worked through the 60s and 70s and 80s and passed away in 1992. Satyajit Ray started his film career with Pathir Pachali, The Song of the Road, in 1955. And if you think of the time when Ray started making his films, it was really a new nation. India was newly independent. There were lots of changes happening in this very large country. Ray, who was born and who grew up and who worked in Calcutta, always kept that as his base and made most of his films in the Bengali language. So even within India, his audience was pretty much the Bengali-speaking audience and some more world cinema inclined audience across the country. At this time, the Hindi cinema industry was very big, booming. There were very big names like Raj Kapoor and Guru Dutt and Vimal Roy making films in Bombay. But Ray never wanted to move from his base, which was Calcutta. Ray was not only a filmmaker, he was an extraordinarily talented, multifaceted artist. And so he was a writer, he was a publisher, he wrote some of the most successful children's fiction through the 60s and 70s. And I think I'm from that generation who have grown up on Ray fare, literally, on his cinema, on his literature, on his children's fiction, the supernatural stories, the science fiction stories. And he was also a musician. He composed the music for his films. He took over the camera operation after the first few films when Subrata Mitra was his cinematographer. And he also, in great detail and with great meticulousness, wrote on the scripts, created the art design, the production design, worked on the costumes. So he was a man who was literally part of every creative department of his films. Ray also had an extraordinary eye for casting, and he brought to his films the extraordinary talent of Soumitra Chatterjee, Sharmila Tagore, Madhabi Mukherjee, and the films, Debi, Charulata, Mahanagar, Pathir Pachali, Apur Sangshar. These are films which are part of, any of the best films which have come to us through surveys here at the BFI and in many other international surveys. The Apur trilogy and Charulata remain some of the best films of the world.
এই গানগুলো আপনার কাছেই থাক, কাজলকে যদি বোর্ডিং এ দিতে হয়। আমি পুলুকে আরেকবার বলে দেখবো, আপাতত কিছুদিন কষ্ট করে ওকে আপনার কাছেই রাখতে হবে। আমি আসি।
বাপ হয়ে ছেলের উপর জোর করবার কি কোনো অধিকারই তোমার নেই? ওই তো একরত্তি ছেলে, নিয়ে যাও না জোর করে।
না, সে আমি পারবো না।
তুমি কিছুই পারবে না, সে আমি আগে থেকেই জানতাম তুমি পারবে না।
It was Satyajit Ray who actually put Indian cinema on the map, on the global map, on the international map of cinema, of world cinema, so to speak. He was making films at a time when Bengali cinema had its wonderful golden tradition of literary cinema, of using theatre devices, of being very melodramatic, very heavy in speech and rhetoric. And then there was also the big Hindi cinema happening with its very large studio-based productions with song and dance. Ray himself wanted to make different cinema. He wanted to make realistic cinema, say real stories about real people. And when he came to London in 1950 and spent a few months here during his work as a graphic designer for an advertising company, he saw many films. He saw about 100 films. And the neorealism from Italy, the Italian neorealist films, were the direct impact on his cinema, on his conviction that he could make films like this in India. So Ray really took off with Pather Panchali, and then there was an almost unstoppable journey over several decades where every film of his reached the big festivals. They won awards at Cannes, they won awards at Venice. He also won the Sutherland Award here for Apur Sansar at the BFI. So he was recognized as an international figure much before people within India recognized him as a, as a pan-Indian filmmaker. Ray, I think today when we look back at his work many years after his passing, he had an extraordinary sense of history. And he was able to find stories, find narratives, which were always catching a sort of interface between moments of change. So when this great big change happened and rural India was changing and the big cities were growing, the Apu trilogy is put into that backdrop. In the city of Calcutta, there were many changes, and the values and the family structures of middle-class homes were changing, and he brings that into Charulata, he brings that into Mahanagar, or the big city. Then he also has the city trilogy later on in the 70s, during the time of the Naxal movement, during the time when the city was in great flux and the youth was directionless, and a lot of new turbulent developments were taking place. For him, with his later films, I think there was always a moral question about a system which was gradually growing too large, a system which was gradually growing too corrupt. And so moral values and inherent honesty, and how people are moving away from those basic values and having to change themselves and change their life to this larger world which feeds into their own little lives. So Ray uses these large, sometimes momentous changes in the backdrop, but has small stories which carry extraordinary humane values and deep psychological insight. He also has a lot of humor in his films. There is great irony. For example, in Teen Kanya, he has a very humorous way of looking at a young girl who wants to be like the boys, play like the boys, and then only gradually emerge as a young, beautiful woman later on. So there are changes in character, there are changes in family structures, there are changes in the larger socio-political milieu within which these characters are placed. And that is what I think makes his films quite extraordinary, very valuable to study and to appreciate. And today for the new generation and for the younger people here in London, they're getting this fabulous opportunity to look at all his films chronologically, starting from Pathe Pachali, and also getting Mahanagar as the restored version, the restored print, which will be out on general release in many more cinemas for people to catch.